and welcome to Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by Dan Toffling, the co-founder of health tech platform Folia Health. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hi, Lee. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Excited to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be an interesting one for sure. We've had a lot of people come on and talk about various health tech platforms, but nothing this specific. So really interested to get your insights on this one. So to kick things off then, give our listeners a bit of an insight then into what the problem is that you guys are solving, the mission and the inspiration behind that.
Sure. Well, I think we're actually trying to solve two problems, and we've made great progress over the last several years doing that. I'll start with the first one, describe it with a personal story. My daughter Mila was born with Down syndrome in 2011. She also had a myriad of other health issues, including we had to do open heart surgery at 3 months, thyroid issues, hearing. We're finally through all that. We're at typical behavioral issues of a 12-year-old. So that's great. But it really shone a light on navigating the healthcare system when you have a lot of complex health issues to deal with.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough as a kid and growing up to not have that many health issues. So it didn't really cross my mind until we were fully in it. And specifically around just being able to not only track the different things that were happening with our daughter. Of course, the rest of the world continues to spin, right? There's still life goes on. It's very difficult to keep track of all these different things. And we would visit specialists every 6 months, every 3 months. So there would be a lot of time in between. We were talking to the physicians or specialists, and being able to remember all of the things that were important for us to discuss with the doctor was very difficult. My wife's go-to was Excel sheets. Maybe even sort of like an Apple Notes, that kind of thing. And it was great for us to track things, but it was very difficult for us to get insights into them.
Sure.
Similarly, my co-founder, her brother had a similar situation, grew up with common variable immune deficiency, which was more of a diagnostic odyssey for their family, trying to figure out what was actually happening. So when I met Nell in 2016, she had this idea of creating a patient-centric platform that allowed people to flexibly track treatment, symptoms, their response to treatment, any type of measurements and things like that. But then also have the ability to create graphs, be able to look at just the output of these things in an aggregate fashion, in a very easy, simple to use application. Sort of meeting the patients where they are on mobile devices, where they're most comfortable. So that first problem was sort of the genesis of what the Folia platform does, being able to help individuals with complex, chronic, rare disease navigate their healthcare journey and be able to have confidence and control over what they're experiencing.
Okay.
The second problem we're also trying to solve is sort of we're bridging the gap between traditional research tools and sort of the individual subjective experience during any type of clinical trial, drug development, just research in general on healthcare. Typically right now, most clinical trials or research programs have very rigid survey-based data capture, right? So it's one size fits all. Now it's specific to a specific problem they're trying to solve, but they're not allowing for sort of the nuance for what patients are experiencing during these clinical trials or the information that the patient would like to give them. So our second problem we're solving is taking that data that the people have tracked to benefit them individually and use that data in what we call programs or research studies to then further either understanding of a disease category or for therapeutic development with pharmaceutical companies.
Wow, interesting. So there's a lot going on there. So give us a bit of an overview then on, obviously it's a mobile app. How does the app actually work for the consumer?
Sure. So it's a very simple way to answer questions that you set up for yourself. So you would list the treatments that you're taking currently, You would list the different symptoms that you experience either on a regular basis or
Yeah.
over time. We're actually working on a much more flexible way to set up scheduling. So sort of similar to what Google Calendar allows you to do, the flexible, like if I want to track stuff on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, or every other Tuesday, sort of just making the flexible nature of the data capture for users that much easier. And it's, like I said before, the sort of the full circle of capturing the data, but then also being able to gain insights from it. We allow people to create their own graphs. So you could create a treatment over time, and you want to track two different symptoms that may be affected or not affected by it. You can see visually how that's actually happening based on what you've tracked. And also sort of in a simple condensed format we call a simple report that does this in more of a paragraph or conversational aspect, where it would sort of list out what's been going on the last 30 days that you've been trying to pay attention to.
Okay, great. So all of this is just there to make the person who's doing the caring, I suppose, their lives a lot easier, right?
Right. So it's, I mean, we started off, it was more of a, our initial users were pediatric, and we had sort of a caregiver patient dynamic where it was much more like I explained my personal experience. It was me tracking for my daughter. Obviously, she was too young. But it's pretty much for either individuals who want to track for themselves, as well as like sort of the caregiver patient dynamic.
Wow. And so the tech that's behind it then, is that all built in-house, or do you outsource that? How does that work?
Yeah, no, we built everything from scratch several years ago, and we've been iterating it on sort of, I mean, we do 2-week sprints, we get features, we get all kinds of things going on. We've really focused on sort of data security and data privacy as well as a foundational aspect of the builds. We're using AWS. We've got enterprise level infrastructure behind it for our internal API. We're pretty much trying to make this as simple as possible for the end user, but with having as much robust scaling power behind it.
I was going to say, I'm sure that the user research and user experience is, front and center for this as well.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, every sort of decision we make, either at the feature level or even a commercial strategy, we're always saying, is it a net positive for the end user, right? That's sort of our North Star, making sure that everything that we do starting from day one was in the best interest of the end users. Because if they don't get any value out of it, it doesn't really work over time, right? So that's sort of been our mantra going forward there.
Having spoken to you before, you're a super values-driven business. You talked about your personal experience before. What are the things that you do value as the co-founder of the business? How do you feel that those values, when you're hiring your team as well, and you've got to hire people that share those values, how do you think that sets you apart?
Yeah, I mean, our mission, as we've sort of described it, is helping other people sort of navigate their difficult circumstances. So there's a lot of, obviously from Nell and I, there's an identification there. We understand it. We've also sort of tried to allow people who are mission driven or have experience in their family. Believe it or not, it's a lot more common for people or family members to have these chronic diseases than is expected. But having people have at least a little bit of experience with someone in their family that has a chronic illness or rare disease, easier to sort of identify with the mission. And like I said before, we started this way, right? So it's not like we tried to go from a commercial route to a consumer app route. We started day one with the North Star being the end user. And it's one of those things where we continually address that fact, right? Is this new initiative going to be beneficial to the end user, to the individual using the application? So that's sort of front and center, and that's what we've built our culture around at Folia Health.
Okay, thanks for that. So moving on then, I think you were incepted back in 2017, so 6 years ago. A lot's gone on since then. And continues to do so. And like with all startups, it's never plain sailing. What's been the biggest challenges? How have you managed to jump through those hurdles?
Yeah, well, I mean, just around the typical entrepreneurial experience, you hear a lot of no's, right? There's a lot of doubting and things like that, and that's sort of, you have to overcome that. Just as a general principle, I think I was listening to Mark Andreessen on one podcast the other day, and he was saying, essentially, you have to be ready to get punched in the face on a daily basis for a long period of time. All right, it sounds crazy, but and the other part of that is you have to pretend that it's not affecting you, so you don't present weakness to your team or externally in that kind of sense. So, I mean, outside of that typical experience, I think any sort of innovation in healthcare is tough to sort of get off the ground, just because the establishment is just very entrenched. Obviously, healthcare moves slow, and it moves slow for a reason, obviously, right? Because things need to be intentional. And I've learned that over time, where it's not just people sort of pushing back against innovation. There just needs to be a lot of intentional things that are put in place, because ultimately we're affecting people's lives, right? I think the biggest challenge to start was sort of defining the market. So how is this data going to be valuable outside of the individual, so we could actually sort of put a business model in place? Yeah. And over time, and even just recently, it seems that sort of the top-down sort of thoughts around listening much more to what the patient experience is in these sort of either decentralized clinical trials or any other aspect has sort of shifted a little bit more towards, yeah, you know what, there is value in reported outcomes from individuals versus these survey-based types of things. I think though that was sort of a big challenge for us, because that's sort of just a big sort of sea change that we've been working on for a while, and it seems that things are starting to move in the right direction. I think another sort of, we've actually spent a lot of time on just making sure our platform is compliant with regulatory frameworks. Just because we're dealing with therapeutic development, we're not technically a digital therapeutic by any means, but we're putting our best foot forward when we're dealing with any type of drug development in any phase. We're making sure that we have all of the compliance and regulatory frameworks in place to be able to protect people's data. Ultimately, for the end user, like I said before, we're doing this for the end user. Data privacy is always top of mind, specifically around people consenting for using their data with our platform and that sort of thing. That's sort of been a very big piece of what we do.
What's next then? Anything exciting? Any developments that you can share with us?
Sure. Yeah. At the end of this month, we're actually launching our initial redesigned launch. Pretty much been working on it for about 9 months, maybe a year. Really? It's a complete overhaul of our front end, which basically takes the same things we talked about earlier about usability, simple, ease of use, and really brings that to the next level. In addition to that, we've actually overhauled all of our sort of our infrastructure and architecture to then be able to scale faster in the next 6, 8, 10 months. So we can actually handle a lot more programs, a lot more users, increase our velocity in a development fashion. So that's sort of one of our big pushes that is soon to come out at the end of the month.
Will that go hand in hand with a kind of new market strategy or a business development strategy of some sorts to actually get those users on board?
Yes, so we've actually heavily focused on our go-to-market strategy earlier in the year, end of last year, which was more sort of putting what I would call sort of a menu in front of sort of the potential data customers to be able to say, okay, this is what we can provide, what we can put together, just to give people a better sense. I think another sort of thing that's more focused towards end users is this. We're launching a Canopy series, which is our internal research program, which retrospectively looks at all of the individuals on our platform and is specifically done for them. It has nothing to do with any type of data customers or any of that kind of stuff. So we're really putting our best foot forward to show the end user population that we're working towards their goals as well. Fantastic.
Dan, that's all we've got time for, but thanks so much for joining us. As I thought, it's been super insightful to listen to what you guys are up to, and best of luck with the new developments. Guys, this has been Dan Toffling, the co-founder of health tech platform Folia Health. Dan, thanks again.
Thank you, Lee. Great to be here.